Hello, hello, and welcome back to yet another episode of Sober Orange Couch. I'm Rory T. First and foremost, I'd like to say thank you so much to everybody that's reached out. It's not a big thing, but just hearing you guys talk about this podcast and for those that it's helped so far, it's just been incredible to hear, and I'm very grateful and grateful that I am able to continue doing this. I'm happy to say that I am back and more sober than yesterday and have a very good topic tonight. I won't typically do this, but it will come from the Alcoholics Anonymous book, the big book, so people like to call it. Before I get into that, I have a little bone to pick with food, and in particular, food that is cooked with alcohol. This might be funny to some, but I was at dinner the other night, and on the menu, there was this wonderful dish that I really wanted. However, at the end it says cooked and braised in red wine. And I thought to myself, yes, I know that when you're cooking food with alcohol, the alcohol is actually burnt off most of the time. I'm not a scientist. I'm not Bill Nye the Science Guy. I don't know how that all works. But deep down inside of me, I was actually concerned and kind of triggered because I really wanted to order that. I really wanted to order that meal, but I was like, but it's got alcohol. Like I can't have that. It's got alcohol. So I didn't. And sure enough, I ended up getting a different dish, which we all shared, and it was the best dish of the table. It's just so funny how little things like that something so little as cooking with wine, that had my mind racing. That's kind of just part of this everyday stuff that we live with. And, that's just something that won't go away. But, I am thankful that I get to laugh on it now. But I'll tell you what, I had little mice legs running through my head at the dinner table because I was like, oh my God, I'm not allowed to have this. It's got alcohol. What if I get drunk? What if they smell alcohol in my breath? I'm going to get in so much trouble. So I had to get that off my chest. But tonight I was in an awesome meeting. It was led by a good friend of mine, and it came from page 86 of the of Big Book, as they call it, which is right here. And on page 86, it goes, "When we retire at night, we constructively view our day. We were resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid. Do we owe an apology?" So there's more to this that I'll read on, but this really hit me in the feels because when I used to retire at night, man, I usually had a beer or a glass of wine next to the bed. And that was always a thought on my mind. Is okay, I've got a beer, I've got a glass of wine, and I'm in bed, got the movie on. It was normal. It was just what I was used to. And, looking back on that, wow, I mean, the amount of time I spent from getting to bed, making sure I had that drink before I went to sleep as my tradition, man, it saddens me. And I'm just happy that I can be in such a better place now, working a program and talking about it. But, when page 86 talks about, if we were resentful, were we selfish, were we dishonest? Shit, I was dishonest all day. I was drinking all day. And was I selfish? Absolutely, I was selfish. How could I not be? I chose to focus from sunrise to sundown on drinking. And, I was never afraid until I sobered up and was getting help. And I realized that I have so much to be afraid of when I drink because I stand to lose everything. And, I was constantly dishonest with myself. I was constantly selfish. Was I resentful? No, but I'm resentful now because I stole so much time away from myself just doing those things at night. From the sober side of it all now, when I retire at night, I pretty much have the same routine, except now is my glass of water there? Do I have my glass of water? Because I know I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night parched and not reaching for a beer. And boy, have I done that a couple times. Woken up in the middle of the night and drink a beer by mistake. Well, I call it a mistake, but I'm sure I knew what I was doing. That leads into the next part of, do we owe an apology? I owe an apology to a lot of people. I don't think there's enough 8x11 paper, double-sided, that I don't owe apologies to. But I'm going to start off with saying, yes, we owe an apology. And when we're able to finally admit that we owe an apology, the monkey comes off our shoulders. And just because we know finally that we owe an apology does not mean that the apology is given. Let's not confuse that, because I've done that before, past rounds of trying to get sober. And that was, oh yeah, I owe apologies. I'll get to it. And guess what? I don't. And sure enough, I go right back into my old habits. The beer and wine is on the bedside table. It's next to me all night, and I wake up. I don't reach for water. I reach for that. And, it's that same thing I talked about. We go around this hamster wheel and doing the same thing over and over because that's what I've been led to believe by myself, is that alcohol was the answer. And, have we kept something to ourselves which should be discussed with another person at once? And that's a lot about what the steps ask us to do. And that's a really hard subject because it hurts. Because if I had just spoken out sooner about my actual problem instead of constantly hiding behind it, I would have been so much further along in my recovery. And that's the hardest part about it all. It's the hardest part about recovery is talking about it. And, once we do admit that we've got a problem and that we are powerless, the journey can begin in recovery. And once we share it with another person, it levels the playing field against the fight. Towards the end of this paragraph, it states that we must be careful not to drift into worry, remorse, or morbid reflection, for that would diminish our usefulness to others. And worry was my middle name. And worry is one of those things that makes us continue to drink, at least for me, because I'd wake up and I'd worry, I'd be anxious, and I'd have all these feelings that the only way to get rid of them, besides facing them, was to drink. And thankfully, now that I know how to worry and talk about my feelings and be open with myself, whether it's in front of others or in front of this beautiful camera, it was a tough place to be in, constantly worrying and then drowning it out with liquor and repeating it over and over again. Because it was, it's tough living that life in constant worry and drowning it out with liquor, going through every day, time and time again, through the vicious cycle of just drinking to push away the worries to tomorrow. The quote I've heard that I use often, that I try to live my life by now: by drinking today, you're borrowing happiness from tomorrow. And I sure as hell didn't get that until I stopped drinking. But leading into remorse, the only remorse I've got now is that it took so long to figure this shit out. Because now I know I've wasted so much time trying to get sober because I didn't want to listen. I didn't want to speak. Man, it just feels good to speak now. It feels good to talk to others about sobriety, whether they're in sobriety or not, whether they're sober curious. or which for those of you who don't know is, family members of alcoholics. The morbid reflection and thinking that that's going to diminish our usefulness to others is such an alcoholic way of thinking. And it's so easy to read that now and be like, God, I'm glad I don't live in that world anymore. I'm not perfect, nowhere near perfect, but I sure as hell am sober, and I'm going to stick to that.